Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Podcast of the Rings. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi. My normal co-host is Alex Mitchell, and we're back at it again, talking about The Hobbit with our very special guest that it seems like our audiences prefer is Ben Goddard. Welcome back, Ben Goddard.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be back.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah, we had to pay you a lot to come back.
Like, my quote keeps going up so like we might have to do like 3 episodes for Desolation of Smaug. Just, the holidays are here, bills are tight, like it happens.
I totally understand.
I will renegotiate.
And the boost you've given us, we can afford it,
Yeah, exactly.
We're saving
You just
money.
know what you're worth.
Yeah.
What, Alex?
We're saving money, honestly. we're losing money by not paying Ben.
We're all coming up. We're all coming up, Ben. So it is unusual because we spent the majority. We spent last week going scene by scene, talking about Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Part 1, but the first half of Part 1.
And I think it's important you say Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, because that was a big thing we mentioned, is that it's like, this is the Lord of the Rings prequel.
It is the Lord of the Rings prequel. It's the same way that it's a mouthful, but it is, the real title is The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, or The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. It's in order for people to know what it is, that had to be part of the title.
Well, you see what happened, Glass Onion is coming out, and that's a Knives Out sequel, not a Benoit Blanc mystery or something like that. Like, they had to put Knives Out in the title because even, comic book movies rule the world around us, but even Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, made no money, and a big part of that was because of the title. Like,
right.
I thought Birds of Prey was a fine movie. I know people liked it more than others, but like they literally had to change the title of the movie halfway through its run, where Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, because you need that, and people. They need that name recognition. You need that hashtag that makes sense, that people be like, oh, that's that movie.
Yeah,
and
the thing I already know.
Yeah, and so it's like, I'm surprised that, the studio had enough faith where like, oh yeah, The Hobbit is a recognizable enough title, but they definitely put Howard Shore back in the booth. They made sure to make as many references to Lord of the Rings as possible, especially in this first movie.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of Easter eggs that we'll get into.
Oh, so because Alex and I have been watching the Rankin Bass and rereading The Hobbit, and learning the history leading up to the first version of The Hobbit to the second re-release of it, the book, it feels like it's not unlike, I feel like Peter Jackson is just doing what J.R.R. Tolkien did, which is like, hey, here's how these two things connect. So it didn't feel like it was forced. Never mind. Forget it. Because you guys are talking about how visually and story-wise they embellished The Hobbit.
Yes.
To be
a Lord of the Rings prequel. Like, yes, the dwarves want to go to the Lonely Mountain to reclaim their homeland, but Gandalf is also like, oh, well, Sauron might want to use that as a strategic point, and he might want to, draft Smaug into the Dark Army. So it's like, and there are plenty of videos out there. Like Nerd of the Rings is a great YouTube channel where it's like, what if Smaug had, joined Sauron? It'd be game over. Like it wouldn't have been a fight. It would have
it have been game over, or would they have found the breastplate that was the hole in his breastplate, like that ended him in one arrow?
Well, Bilbo wouldn't have been able to sneak up and see it. That was the only reason they found the weakness.
Why would it have been game over?
It's imagine this is like World War II Manhattan Project, the nuclear weapons that help end the war.
He's that powerful,
and a nuclear weapon with an IQ of like 200. Like they don't do too much of it, and that's like, we'll get to it, in 3 weeks. Where like the whole Benny Hill kind of chase of like, hey, we're over here chase. I'm like, okay, Smaug is much smarter than this in the books, and like dragons have like this kind of hypnosis that they put over people.
Sure.
And so it would have been maybe not game over, but it would have been, it would have been very tough, like even more so tough of like being surrounded by 10,000 orcs, and luckily Frodo bails them out of a of a card right there. Like
and
no eagles are gonna turn the tide of that dragon fight.
That's right. They're all flying away on fire.
Yeah.
And not to mention as well, you have to think about this, which gets more into stuff that we learn in Lord of the Rings, but the strategic importance of Erebor and the surrounding areas as a location is important because Smaug is defeated and the Free Peoples are able to rebuild there. That's important for the War of the Ring, where Sauron can't use that as a foothold to help his military conquest as well. So it's not only the fact that he would have a dragon as a weapon, but now he has that as a place to stage his armies.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Rivendell would have fallen way quicker.
Yeah, he would have attacked Thranduil's kingdom from the Lonely Mountain, and like they barely won their fight, as well as the dwarves of the Iron Mountains,
and Lothlorien as well.
Yeah,
because he attacks it, and Galadriel defends. He attacks from Dol Guldur in the War of the Ring. But imagine if he had a much better foothold there, Lothlorien would have fallen as well.
Do they not illustrate that in the movie? They don't.
No.
Do they? But that is in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for that part.
When Frodo flees from Boromir and he sits on that chair and sees the eye in the book, it's like a watchtower that he can see around the Middle Earth, and he sees like the Iron Mountains are on fire, Lothlorien is being sieged, and so is Mirkwood, and like he sees all like of Sauron's armies moving around. So there's like a little bit of that. He just goes straight to Mordor in the movie, but he sees like kind of everything that is about to go down in the War of the Ring.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think I read The Hobbit and I read The Lord of the Rings years and years ago. So all that really does stick in my head is the movies. And so it's been really interesting going back to the books. My question is, before we jump into the movie and I left my tarot back there, but I'll grab it in a second. Would Smaug have joined Sauron? And why? Because I think Smaug is the perfect definition of like evil neutral.
Yeah, I mean, the dragons were created as weapons of Morgoth, so I think there is that sort of inherent connection similar to the orcs that Sauron would be able to tap into to turn him to his side.
I just feel like he's lazy. He wants to sleep. Look at his gold.
But he knows how to motivate people. Sauron is like the ultimate deceiver, and so he knows like, hey, why don't you go take back Moria for us? Just do that, or go. And since you're over there, I mean, might as well just sack Rivendell. I mean, it's right there. I mean, and so like he just knows how to gaslight people into doing what they want without them realizing it. Like Saruman is the most powerful wizard, and he got him under his wing.
Yeah,
easily.
he defeated Saruman mentally. Like he went, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
I 100% would not have had the strength that Galadriel apparently had in Rings of Power to turn down that face, that accent, that body, and that offer. I would like to think that I'm better than that, and I'm just not. I learned on one of the episodes of Podcast of the Rings. Nope, not Podcast of the Rings. You don't know Nick. I had a guest, my friend Dr. Christopher, and he was talking about Plato and Plato's philosophy of the ring, that it makes you invisible when you put it on. And like this worker was told like, hey, if you got this invisible ring, what would you do? He goes, oh, well, I'd liberate the sad princess and I would steal the money and give it to the town, basically a la Robin Hood. And Plato's like, BS, man. Yeah. You would kill the prince, sleep with the princess, steal the money, and get out of Dodge. And it really is the illusion that I really think Tolkien strongly pulls from that. It has to be. The fact that not everyone is Frodo, let's put it that way, to resist it as long as he did.
Yeah.
And that's just it. Not everyone can be. We all want to be, but we can't all be that.
And no one ever, well, with maybe the exceptions of Sam and to a certain extent Bilbo, like resists the power of the ring. No one ever actually, besides Bilbo, makes the choice to give up the ring.
Under
And
duress, though,
and-
to be fair.
Yeah, Bilbo
Yeah.
only does it because Gandalf helps him
Right.
and uses his strength and
Which
his
is
own ring, the power
A
of his own
great
ring.
allegory for if you need help, ask.
To do that. Yeah, totally.
Yes.
The first step is admitting that you need help. All right, you two hold down the fort while I go grab the tarot deck
Sure.
momentarily.
Yeah, circling.
Momentarily.
Oh, I see
Nailed
what you
it.
did there. Circling back a little bit while Jess does this. One of my favorite board games is The War of the Ring, and I love it because you can actually play out the battles in the north and Dale and Lothlorien. It's like a tactical war game, and so I love that. And it also allows you to sort of, it's like alternate histories you get to create in this 2-player game where one person's controlling the forces of evil and one's controlling the free peoples. So you can be like, what if they took a different path with the ring? What if they actually didn't go through Moria?
Ben, if I
so
could
it's
make
very
if I can give you a word of advice, if you want to remain friends with Alex, don't ever play a deceptive game a la Mafia or Among Us or anything like that. You just won't want to be associated with him.
It's so
after
much
you play.
fun, though. I love playing those games.
Those Among Us days, like just screaming and gaslighting at your friends, and then
It actually has made me such a good liar or a jokester. Like Alex was out here and we went to the Universal Studio backlot tour. He'd never been, and I got him a couple good times. Like, oh my god, I've never seen this on the earthquake part, and he's like, oh,
It's good stuff.
You just have to learn how to really undersell. And I have this huge tell where I'm like, I'm about to tell you a joke, and my eye starts twitching, and my like lips curl to the side. I'm
so excited.
I deceive myself, really. All right, Ben, since you're our guest, you're going to tell me when to stop. Starting now.
Stop.
Okay. And remember, upside down, or this is right side up. The sword, the 7 of Swords. So let's see.
Ooh.
What are? While I do this, Alex, for those that have never heard this, what am I doing right now?
Ben has chosen a tarot card, and Jess is consulting the wonderful fold-out that came with. And this is a set of Lord of the Rings tarot-themed tarot cards. So we're going to see, I don't know what this tarot card might apply to, what this episode's going to be like, what we thought of the movie, just life in general, maybe. Who knows?
It could resonate. I mean, you don't even have to share. Maybe it resonates with someone in the audience, and that's all that matters. The 7 of Swords, upright. The 7 of Swords finds you with worm tongue whispering in your ear, his words steeped in betrayal. You have likely discovered that some of your allies are really opponents, guys, making you wonder if there's anyone you can trust. Oh my God. And there is yourself. Think strategically and keep your own interests top of mind. We were just talking about you being deceptive. That's
Wow.
100. I don't care who says astrology and tarot cards don't work. That works.
It's very fitting to what we literally were just talking about. Yeah.
Beyond fitting. Well, it seems like we can't trust each other, so might as well do an hour and a half long podcast together. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to part 2 of part 1 of The Hobbit. I'm back again here after that 2-second break with Ben Goddard and Alex Mitchell. Let's get into it. Where do we leave it, boys?
The company had just arrived in Rivendell, Imladris.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited for this part.
And I have to say, like, this moment, despite my feelings about what happens in Rivendell, the just shot of the reveal with the Howard Shore cue is gorgeous. It hits you in the feels if you are a fan of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy. Beautiful.
It's so good. The Howard Shore just put his whole back into this score, and just everything about it works. I don't care if it's copying Lord of the Rings. It doesn't matter. It still sounds just as good in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, like, you can't make, if you were to do another Harry Potter sequel, or if you were to do another Star Wars that was of the Skywalker, you can't do it without those songs. or like
Right.
hearkening to them. So you can understand why. I can understand why it's connected, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
even his like, I love his theme for Rings of Power too. It's like just enough of a sort of homage to what he did in the Peter Jackson movies. And honestly, like rewatching these movies, even like the dwarf theme grows on me, even though even if it's new. He's just an amazing composer, and I grew up, when these movies came out with my D&D group, we would just have that on loop, all 3 soundtracks when we played D&D. So I have these scores in my blood, ingrained in me. So they're
Of the
so,
Hobbit?
they're so good. No, Lord of the Rings.
Okay, which is fine if it's The Hobbit. I just thought that was funny.
No, those came out later.
And to be fair, too, there was a minute when we were watching Rings of Power where I was like, God, I can't recognize a single theme of Bear McCreary's orchestration. And it just took a couple episodes. You just have to wrap your brain around it. One of my biggest criticisms about the MCU movies is, and there's actually, great YouTube videos out there. And I had tweeted about it, and both like Hector Navarro and Joe Starr was like, there's a reason why nothing is memorable. They even have like a small Captain America theme, but it's really unpronounced. And the theory being they want the movies to do well, so they don't want to take risks when it comes to themes being memorable. And there's also like an issue of like they'll put in placeholders and stuff, and then the director only hears these placeholders from other movies and goes, "Wait, I just want that."
Yeah.
It's a mere exposure effect, right? You've heard something a million times, but you don't remember something if it's not a bold choice, like Superman, right? Or like Star Wars. Who thinks to do bum, ba, da, bum? Like it's.
Well, to be fair with Star Wars, because that is a problem, coming from a musician's perspective of like the director only wanting what the placeholder score is. But even with Star Wars, some of the placeholder scores they used, Howard Shore just ripped off. And so there's plenty of analysis. I think it's like Holst and a couple other classical composers. He just straight up ripped off their scores, and it works, and they're memorable. So there's something to be said about that. But yeah,
I think that is also one of the things that video was talking about that they both shared with me, is that like at a certain point you are just going to end up rewriting the thing. But we also don't exist in a void as artists anyway. Like the whole internet, if you're on Twitter, which God help you, but is about the AI art is it's theft. And in certain cases, artists can directly go, that was my art. But in reality, it's supposed to be an amalgam, right? It's like, oh, this influenced me from, or like the AI would pull from little different areas of the internet as opposed to directly ripping off an artist. But also, we all steal art from everyone else too, because our art doesn't exist in a void. You wouldn't know what kind of art you wanted to do if you weren't inspired by Johnny Carson or Steve Martin or Drew Barrymore. You wouldn't know. I would not be the actress I am if I didn't watch Jennifer Aniston on Friends since I was a kid. Now that I said that, you'll see it in everything I do. It's I actually didn't. I had to have a friend point it out to me, like, oh my God, you're Rachel. And that's fine, and it's great because like who else would you want to be, really? But I couldn't. I was directly influenced, and that is art in general. So for good or for bad, it works, and it does give us something to hang our hat on at the end of the day. But there is still bold choices in what Howard Shore does too.
Yes,
absolutely.
Is my really long-winded thought on that. All right, so we roll into Rivendell, and this is really where the movie just starts torpedoing for me.
It's firing on all cylinders.
It is interesting.
So here's where an interesting aspect, in addition to this story, gets fleshed out, is this idea of the White Council meeting and them like Gandalf being afraid he has to convince them to like let this quest happen, which isn't really. I get what they're trying to do, but I think it's a little bit odd. And this all the White Council stuff, it just grinds the pace of the movie a little bit to a halt. I think I remember saying when we were watching this, Jess, during the White Council scene, like, hey, remember the adventure Bilbo's on? Wasn't that cool?
Yeah, right. it does
Like-
completely derail it. And if it's about the
Yeah.
Hobbit, it stops becoming about the Hobbit, right? At that
Yeah.
moment in time. My question, though, is, and this was one of my die on the hill points about Rings of Power, is if you're brand new to this, you've never seen Lord of the Rings, you're like, you know what? For some dumb reason, I'm going to jump into the Rings of Power. I'm going to jump into the Hobbit. Do you need this scene? Does this scene help you?
If and this is where the whole idea of this being a prequel trilogy really, I think, becomes important. If you've never seen the Lord of the Rings movies and you watch the Hobbit trilogy, so much of this stuff makes zero sense.
Are you sure about that, though? Or is it just you that knows
Yes,
too much?
because-
Like, what do you
no.
think, Ben?
I think it's a little bit of both, because when you talk about Rings of Power, I was thinking about that. Like, the only reason we're kind of on Galadriel's side is because we know the future. Like, if there'd been, how long was it? Like 300 years of peace without Sauron? I can't remember what the number was that they're throwing around in Rings of Power. But it's been it's been a
They're-
long
they're
time since
vague on
Sauron
the
like
numbers,
hadn't
yeah.
we hadn't seen Sauron, like people thought he was defeated, like we don't see any orcs at all. So like Gil-galad is a little bit of a D-bag in the show, but I can't fault him for thinking this way of like, yo, like we're good. We did the thing. We won the battle. But we know better. Like we're on Galadriel's side because we know better because of outside sources. And it's a little bit of both in this, where I think they do a good job explaining what a necromancer is, and Dol Guldur, and that stuff, but also you recognize like a Morgul blade. Like, yeah, I know that thing. Like that's what stabbed Frodo. Like I recognize, the most recognizable. I recognize the Witch King. Like I recognize that spirit, or I did my nerdy self.
Right.
So it's a little bit of both. I think they do a good job of explaining it, but it is very much, this is this is Lord of the Rings prequel right here. This is where we divert from, oh yeah, like Radagast is talking about this. Oh no, this is, we had a chance, and especially like, in Battle of the Five Armies when Saruman's like, I'll handle this. And it's like, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I didn't watch the extended version of this one. I've seen it like once or twice, and but I own the extended of the next two, so maybe it's cut down a little bit. Like I know we don't have naked dwarves swimming in the regular version, which I know is in the extended.
Oh yeah.
But maybe the White Council is shorter to me. To me, it doesn't grind so much to a halt. Like maybe in the theatrical cut, it flows better. But I think it does a good job of like, hey, like, yeah, we know we're talking about The Hobbit, but we got to make 3 movies. So here's some Lord of the Rings stuff.
But would you
I think-
rather them not do that scene and make 2 movies?
Oh yeah, I want to see Guillermo del Toro's 2 movies. I just watched Pinocchio last night. It was beautiful. It was amazing. I want to see the 2 movies with Ron Perlman as like Azog or something like that. I want to see that for sure. Absolutely. I love Peter Jackson, and I know this is like 95% studio stuff, and he picked up what he could. Oh, we didn't even talk last week about Ian McKellen's like meltdown on set. About you guys have never seen that footage?
I didn't know this. No.
Like it's, I don't want to say meltdown. I love this man so much, but
And we
they do
are pushed to our brink at different times, and then there's a camera on you all, sure.
And all of like Lord of the Rings is forced perspective. There's like a little green screen here and there, but they're doing like
Practical.
He's standing on a box or something like that. There's the dinner scene with the dwarves at Bilbo's. It's just Ian McKellen by himself, green screen, and tennis balls, 13 tennis balls of like points of reference. And at one point he's just, Peter, I can't do this. This isn't acting. Like there's no one here. I'm not talking to anybody. Like what is going on? And it's like just really sad. And it's just, they had this deadline. They had to meet it. And, Peter Jackson wasn't even supposed to, it's like, this is my day off. I'm not even supposed to be here today. And so like, and now we've seen that he hasn't directed anything since this trilogy. He's done those amazing documentaries. We Shall Not Grow Old is beautiful. But this
the,
movie
the
just
Beatles
this
one.
trilogy like just broke Peter Jackson, and like he probably hated what he was doing to his actors of like all green screen, all CGI. When there's all the documentaries with them like hand making the mail for every single Gondorian soldier in Lord of the Rings, like everything's practical that they could, and so it's just such a different rush production. So I don't know. I view that through that lens, and maybe that's my version of rose-colored glasses, where it's like, what they're doing the best we can. So
yeah,
that's my long-winded answer.
No, I think that's right. To go back to like the idea, just for clarity's sake, for me, to go back to the idea that would this have worked if you've never seen The Hobbit or if you've never seen The Lord of the Rings? It actually doesn't, because they don't introduce who Galadriel is at all. They just rest on the fact that you know who she is, and then this is a moment where you see her.
And Saruman.
Right. They're just like, oh, here's these two people that you don't need to know. So like that actually doesn't work on a standalone introduction all by itself.
The look that Gandalf gives when he sees Saruman too, I think is very funny. Where it's like when that friend walks in, where you're like, oh, we're gonna have to hang out with them now, like just kind of a stink face.
But
yeah, it's like which your boss is at the Christmas party.
Yeah,
but
and
I
it's
think
like,
that's
yeah, if you
odd,
don't,
because didn't he have reverence for Sauron until he knew that? So like,
there were conflicts, but and there were tensions, but yeah, I don't know if it's to that extent, because they're kind of like Rings of Power did, compressing the timeline of the White Council, where this meeting we see had happened, or a lot of the things they're drawing
during
from
Mirkwood or whatever.
They'd happened almost 100 years prior.
Oh,
so they're kind of, which is it's fine. Like they're just mixing these two. If you want to include that stuff, sure, compress the timeline. So yeah, I don't know if there would have been as much kind of antagonism between Saruman and Gandalf as they're portraying here.
We would have had to take time to introduce them. Who the heck is that guy?
Yeah, and again, like if I'm just now watching this movie, like never seeing Lord of the Rings, I'm like, what? Why? Who's Saruman? Like what? Why is this important?
But I do feel like Lord of the Rings earned that. Like,
oh, it totally does.
It earned Avatar is going to come out next week. They're not going to re-explain what Pandora is and what the Na'vi are and stuff. There's going to be new unobtainiums, whatever is going to be there, but they're not going to have to re-explain the lore. It's like you've seen Pandora, like you've seen Avatar. And so I think like Lord of the Rings, like who Galadriel and Saruman are. Like they kind of introduce Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell. And, they give Smaug his backstory. They give, Bard the Bowman his backstory. So, like, all the other, Thranduil, they give his backstory a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you kind of get where he's coming, especially in the extended, all the stuff about Legolas's mother is really put into the forefront. Mm-hmm. So I think Lord of the Rings has earned that, who these two are. Like, they're only in this scene, besides, like, the fight at the end of Battle of Five Armies. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. For me, it's like they've earned that street cred of like needs no introduction.
Yeah, I guess what it comes down to for me is like just what the movie was trying to do, what these movies were trying to do, and just the fact that I don't think there should be that reliance upon Lord of the Rings. I'm not saying it's unearned, but it would have been, because that's sort of the original intent of the story itself. Yeah. Is it's this standalone thing, and it does connect if you care to look into it. But I don't know. It's just it contrasts too much in tone with the rest of the.
No. I get like
me, so.
I want the Hobbit. I don't need a Lord of the Rings trilogy, and like I wanted a Hobbit story, but like just. As so far as like, oh, this is Galadriel, like the Lady of Lothlorien. Like, I don't need that. I don't think the movie.
But again, I loved seeing. We talked about this last week, but I liked seeing like Frodo for 2 seconds. I was like, this is so dorky and campy, but it works and it shouldn't, and it's great. And who doesn't want?
Elijah Wood sells it so hard, just like, hey, what's up? I'm back.
I'm a hobbit.
And I think that's fine, because that's just a little moment. But this is like a whole sort of sequence, and that will carry
get
on
over it,
into
Alex.
the other movies, that it just grinds the story to a halt.
See, for me, the biggest problem, and I have this written down, is the weird romantic tension they give Galadriel and Gandalf in this trilogy, where it's just like,
Yeah.
she's married.
Yeah.
She has a canonical husband
Yeah,
that
but
we have met.
Celeborn sucks, though.
Hold on.
That's
Hold on. Am I missing something?
You like they're like holding hands, and then
I see. I thought
and
that
then,
was
then
just
she's
affectionate, like in the same way where we don't have homophobia about the men being loving. Like I read it as like brother sister. Okay, here's a better example. When Elrond greets Galadriel in Rings of Power, they're incredibly affectionate, and he's going to be her son-in-law eventually. Like they're not interested in each other, but there's a lot of affection, and so I chose to read it that way.
I saw like, see, I don't know, maybe it's just like the actors, and maybe the like Ian McKellen and Kate Blanchett are just on a different level.
Yeah, sure.
Than Morfydd
Yeah.
Clark, and
That's also true.
no offense to them. Like those are
No.
two world-class actors. Like,
100%.
and the fact that Kate Blanchett was 31 when she made Lord of the Rings will forever be insane to me.
It's hard. I actually blew my mind too. A little
Yeah.
bit.
But I don't know, like, just because especially like in Battle of the Fire, like we keep referencing the other movies, but he's like, "Come with me." It's like, stop. Like,
All right. Well, because I have not gone into the next two movies yet. I have a
Yeah.
lot to look out for. Apparently.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Yikes.
just wait.
Yikes.
Speaking of Gandalf Galadriel moments, though, there were two in this sort of White Council sequence that I loved and hated at the same time. Is so when you get this reveal, so they're discussing the Morgul blade and what to do, and there's the reveal of the Morgul blade, and then Saruman goes on a long-winded rant about why it's a terrible idea, and then Galadriel is like, "They've left already, haven't they?" And then the look that Gandalf gives her of like, ooh, like he's like
I
so
love it.
he's so pleased with himself,
such a
like
scamp. Gandalf the
oops.
scamp. He's like, he's
Yeah.
young and rebellious, and like that's kind of the look that I was taking from it. Is just like he knows the
Yeah.
greater implications that waking the dragon could have, and he's like, I tried to get this under the radar past HR, and here they are. Like,
But let me go to Rivendell. Rivendell. You can't get under the radar if you're going to the last homely house.
well, because they need to check out the map.
yeah.
I
And
know.
So he had to
luckily,
go there.
guys, the moon runes that are written and can only be read on the moon that they were written, that's tonight. Guys, it's tonight.
Okay,
I hate
that
it. I hate
aspect I'm fine with.
No, you're the
because,
worst with
no,
this,
no.
Alex.
Hear me out. That aspect I'm fine with because chance and fortune and fate play a big part in Tolkien's work, and that's fine. Here's what I have a problem with, and this is super nitpicky, but like Elrond has like a moon letter
Table?
plinth or altar. It's just like, oh, here, let me take you to my moon letter room. Like,
I'm the exact opposite.
I love this.
I believe 100% that Elrond, the greatest elf ever, would have a table that just reads moon letters, and
Yeah.
like you just showing people, oh yeah, that's the moon. What's up, MTV Cribs? It's my moon letter table. This thing is baller as hell, man. Like I never use this, but like who wouldn't want one? Like, am I right? Come on now.
Hold on, you're
Like,
totally right. It's like Galadriel's water mirror. Like it's the same thing.
yeah,
She's just stunting on everybody. But
absolutely.
But it is like a little much because all Elrond does in the book is hold it up to the moon. And
Yeah.
it didn't need to be much more grandiose than that. But it is an epic, right? It's a
that's the
sweeping
MO of
epic.
this movie, is making everything more epic.
Let's say it's
than
like
it
if they
was.
just said, oh, it can only be read on a full moon. I get that. And so, you have like once a month to read it or something, and you just haven't thought to have the map out or something. But
But out
just
of
like,
365 days.
yeah.
It's actually insane to me too and bothers the heck out of me.
Yeah. See, I'm way more that Elrond would definitely have a moon table more so than they just happen to be there. Because especially like, Lord of the Rings, it looks very rushed. Like, oh my God, we got to get the ring out of here. When really like 20 years goes by between Bilbo leaving the Shire
Right.
and Frodo
Yes.
setting out on his quest. And so if Tolkien wrote that, like, oh yeah, they stayed a few months in Rivendell to, recoup, I'd be like, yeah, that's totally Tolkien of them, like just to eat a bunch of limbus bread and chill out and have a nap while, waiting for the right moon to come around.
100%. And Elrond's like, oh, there's definitely moon letters here. I can't read it yet, but we'll see. And he holds it up every day.
They were there for a while in the book.
Alex, I think you need to stop being a Tolkien
the script writer went out of the way to say this exact thing, and so it's just like it's an easily avoidable like nitpick to just be like, and like I'm sure nitpickers would be like, oh really, they just happened to be there on a full moon. It's like, yeah, I'm okay with that, but like they just happen to be there on the exact right day of the year, like they happen to be there on March 13th. Like, okay,
would people have rioted though if Jackson had changed the original source of the text that is found on that exact date too in the book? So would people have rioted if he changed it?
I don't think so. I think Jackson's also earned that credit, even so from like the Tolkien estate of like, we trust you with this.
Right.
Like it's okay to like take those, even like, we were talking about it on stream, Jess, of like Aragorn's entire arc. Like he's got, when Frodo and Pippin and Merry and Sam meet Strider, he's got the broken hilt with him.
Right.
He's like, I'm ready to be king. I'm about that life. And they totally changed they made it his story arc where he's like, no, I don't want it. I never wanted it until the third movie. So like, that's a much bigger change than, moon runes.
Speaking of the shards of Narsil.
Okay.
That's another one of those things that I was like, why was this in here? Is just,
see, that's not in the theatrical cut.
It's not. Okay. So that's an extended. It's literally just a scene. It's like 20 seconds of Bilbo hanging out and looking at the shards of Narsil and looking at the mural of Isildur and
the ring. Well, I mean, that's
Sauron,
why it's in there.
and he sees the ring. Why is that shot in there? That is egregious. That's where it gets egregious. Some of this other stuff, I'm like, okay, maybe I don't like it as much, but that's like literally just, it's pandering a little bit.
That's the thing. Like for me, the Rivendell stuff in the theatrical cut works better because like they go there, they have dinner, all the elf music is playing. Then they like Glamdring, Orcrist. It's a letter opener. I love Balin so much. Ken Stott is so great.
Can we say one thing that is terrible about that sequence?
Wow, Alex,
regardless of what regardless of what you think of adaptations, is the homophobic joke with Keeley.
Yes.
Why did they do that? So where he's checking out one of the elves playing harp to foreshadow his romance with Toriel later on.
Oh, okay. Not in the theatrical.
Okay, I'm glad they cut it then.
Yeah.
But this was in the extended. So he says like, oh, elves, the creamy skin or whatever, it's too much, I don't like that. And they're giving him crap for it. Trying to hide his infatuation with this.
His obsession with elves. It's so F-boy that it makes me upset. It makes because it makes his attachment to this elf that I do have to know a little bit about, being Kate Beckinsale. It makes me so angry as a woman. I'm like, just fall in love with her.
Wait, Kate, what?
It's Kate Beckinsale. No, it's not Kate Beckinsale.
Evangeline Lilly.
She always looks like Kate Beckinsale to me.
Yeah, Evangeline Lilly, who F her.
Yes.
But so then the joke is like he looks and says, oh, that one is maybe more to my liking. And then I can't remember, one of the other dwarves says, oh, well, that's no maid. And then the elf turns around and it's a guy and they laugh.
Oh, okay.
And it's like,
it's a casual homophobia.
This is gross. Yeah, just casual homophobia. I'm glad they cut that from the theatrical version.
I'm upset. I was like, I was taken aback by that, but it's also of the era. But I was like, ugh, this is so such an unnecessary joke. But I really was more offended personally because I felt like it was a direct reflection on me. Like, a guy's just waiting for the hot version of what, like the version of the hot chick he's always wanted to finally pay attention to him. It was definitely like, it had like, it just had sad boy vibes of like, I can't wait until that kind of girl comes into my life kind of thing. I just hated it. Dislike. They were just really bad house guests. Like,
they're not good house guests.
No wonder
like,
they're racist against dwarves a little bit. Not really. I mean, there's no excuse, but still.
I think it was more like, hey, remember the last time we like put up a company of dwarves in Rivendell? Remember how long that took us to, get everything back to normal?
To clean the stink out of the room?
Oh yeah. They had to burn the carpets and the bedding and everything after they left, I'm sure.
Well, it's such a weird turn too, because like when Elrond is like, they're so gracious, like they show them these elvish swords, like the history of their people. He's like, oh yeah, this is Orcrist. Good luck, man. And then and what about this map? It's like, you told him? It's like, he just gave you like this amazing glow in the dark, let you know when enemies are around sword, and you're still like not trusting this person? Like, what is going on, Thorin? Chill out, dude.
It's so back and forth, and it's not trackable, the reason why he's so emo boy too. It's
like him hating Thranduil, I understand.
Yes.
I understand why. But just like Elrond is showing you every hospitality in this moment while you are being a dick to his face.
Yeah, really, you can understand the dislike. Although what's interesting is the Rings of Power does give a whole different understanding of Elrond's affinity and care for dwarves too. I know that it's extrapolated upon, and this wasn't canon for the movies, but Elrond is supposed to be a kind, open-hearted guy. And actually, this version of him is more akin to the version that Alex taught me about, that Tolkien wrote about, than what's-his-face's version in the movie, in the Lord of the Rings movies. So his portrayal of Elrond here is more jovial and nice and authoritative. What's his name? Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving does a better job embodying Elrond, the Elrond we should know from the books, into this. Would you agree?
Yeah, he's still a little stuffy. Like the moment he has with Bilbo where they're on the balcony and he's like, oh, what I've heard of hobbits, they're pretty hardy. And then Bilbo sort of says, well, I heard not to seek the advice of elves, because they'll say yes and no. The fact that so that's lifted from what Frodo says to Gildor in Fellowship of the Ring. And in that moment in Fellowship of the Ring, it's very jokey, and they're bantering with each other, and it's playful. And Gildor laughs at him. He's like, "Oh, that's a funny sort of joke." And here, Elrond just kind of like looks at him. And
that didn't seem like it was a funny moment to you?
There's a slight smile, but like the Elrond I imagine, and obviously they're never gonna get the Elrond I imagine on screen, but would be like giving a hearty laugh.
That's not true, and it is true, Bilbo.
Yeah, exactly. Like he never engages really with the banter. It's just kind of like a wry, cold kind of like acknowledgement of it. Whereas the book Elrond, I imagine, would be a little bit more engaged with that kind of thing. But,
I think that's like the elves. They just like. Do we ever see an elf laugh in 6 movies? I don't think Legolas ever laughs. Like, Haldir, like,
so weird,
begrudgingly accepts Aragorn's hug with, they do the wry smiles. Like, that's as much emotion as we get out of the elves. Oh, no. Galadriel does laugh when Gimli
asks
says,
for
like,
the hair.
Ask for the hair. So that is, like, the one laugh we get is Galadriel, and it's, like, the most precious thing you've ever seen.
You know what? That actually gives even more clarity as to why Morfydd Clark's smile while she's on the horse is jarring.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was your experience, Ben, but Alex and I really were like taken aback when they're riding, her and Elendil are riding, and she's like, her lips are touching her ears. That's how big she's smiling. And it is like, what, girl?
It's just such a difficult task because both Elrond and Galadriel are formed as like these godlike otherworldly beings. And so we get them in these little doses and it makes sense, like Galadriel always being surrounded by light and wonder and like these dreamlike states that they put these elves in. And then, or they're like, in the third movie, they're badass and they're fighting and they're just kicking all the ass. But spending 10 episodes with them and making them have to be relatable with a little bit of shades of gray in there. It's a tough job to do when Tolkien's world is so black and white. Like
Totally.
It's not Game of Thrones. Like there's not good and bad in everybody, and like, oh, they're doing it for this reason. Like it is a tougher job to create those shades of gray where there just haven't been in like the history of like Middle Earth almost.
I agree. I think it's also people had a hard time remembering. We're looking at, even if she's old, a younger version of Galadriel. We're looking at a younger version of Elrond, and so these characters have to have an arc if you're going to do a story. And honestly, ultimately, this is where I land with the Rings of Power, and I know this is not what we're talking about, but I'm so glad they didn't remake Lord of the Rings, because that was what was on the table. They could have done that, and instead they really went for the harder choice to bring to life lesser known versions of stories in the same world. And so they did use Elrond and Galadriel to give us an anchor. It's a bigger task that they didn't do such a bad job with, in my personal opinion. Anyway, our boys leave Rivendell, and then it's time for the mountain. Is that what happens?
Well, they leave in the cover of night.
Sexy.
Much to Gandalf's amusement. And again, I like this because it gives Gandalf a reason not to be there for when the Goblin Town stuff happens, which is, again, nice that they explain it as opposed to just Gandalf piecing out.
I gotta go somewhere else.
But here we get the Stone Giants sequence.
I hate it. 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 I hate it.
This is when The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are different. The Hobbit is so fantastical and whimsical and light, and it's got stone giants. And you're like, what? You just kind of, you're reading the book and it's just kind of thrown in there, and it's like, whoa, these stone giants, like, is this a real thing? And then you watch Lord of the Rings and it's like, this is serious. This is war. This is the fate of the world. And then they're trying to bring that same tone into The Hobbit while keeping the stuff from the Hobbit book, and those tones clash a little bit.
Yeah. And
in a vacuum, like, it looks great.
It's sick.
But it doesn't fit with a Lord of the Rings prequel.
Well, here's the other. So first of all, it's them running away from the Balrog is what I felt like it was trying, because it's a lot of jumping off rocks that are falling. It had that kind of intensity that I felt like they were trying to recapture, to your point of it mirroring Lord of the Rings.
Well, for me in that formula, this would be like the Karathras moment.
It is also
where there's thunder and
Right.
lightning.
You're totally right. It is Karathras. Thank you for the clarification.
And it happens right after they leave Rivendell.
Right.
Yeah.
But my problem with it is the ridiculous impossibility. Not a single person would have survived what they went through.
Nope. They're all dead.
They're all dead. Like, Bilbo died on that mountain that night, and what carried on for the rest of the story was his soul. No one should have been able to jump from knee to knee of a mountainous stone giant. And here's the thing is, I would have certainly, the way I read it in the book, and maybe you guys can tell me what your impression of quote unquote stone giants, that literally only had 2 sentences in the book, by the way. Like, it was just 30 feet tall dudes throwing around rocks because they're having some fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Now, is it cool that literal mountains came to life? Absolutely. But then you're telling me those guys are sleeping in that guy's crotch tonight? What happened? Where are they? Are
It's
all
the butthole.
mountains giants? Like, it just doesn't work. It's too much suspension of disbelief to work for me.
I find it funny you're saying that about a fantasy movie, but
Get wrecked, Alex. Get wrecked.
But it's true though. Like, in a way where, like,
You can
Lord of
only
the
ask
Rings-
us to listen to so much, right?
Well, just like Lord of the Rings put this, like, in a grounded, like, fantastical world in some ways, where it's like, yeah, there's orcs and trolls and balrogs, but like there are rules here. And so having these stone giants in there, like, clashes with that.
I
and
think
so
it,
it's
yeah,
tough.
it-
Well, it's because it's the soft magic, and Alex taught me, like, that's a better phrase for it. It's not like it's like, I don't need to know how a lightsaber works, but if you want to describe it, fine. If you don't want to tell me it's crystals, great. But the soft magic of it, you can kind of buy a few things. But if you're telling me, first of all, I want to see those giants that they depicted. That's sick. Those guys dwarves and a hobbit didn't survive that. And that I can't believe that.
Yeah, this is something that I think...
Gandalf diving into the core of a mountain while riding a fire demon. Hell yes.
And then climbing
rock and roll.
And then climbing all the way back up to the top of the mountain while still fighting the Balrog.
Is that how he did?
days.
Is that what he did?
Yes.
He climbed back?
Yep. They fought all the way up to the top of the mountain.
So I think that's funny, actually, and this is something we can unpack at the time of watching the movies or going over the books. But Gandalf is super shook before he knows it's the Balrog, right? And he's like almost depleted energetically. So like the first time, like they're getting sieged in Balin's, what is it, Dwalin's grave, right? They're getting besieged. Balin's grave. Oh, poor Balin. We love him. We stand him, Balin.
It's my boy.
I know. But so like Gandalf like does the strike of light, right? And they get out it toward the back, and Gandalf is like shook. Do you remember that, Alex? Like,
yeah.
Well, you know who's really shook is Legolas. That's such a Peter Jackson knowing the lore, where like Legolas has shrugged off everything in that whole trilogy, and even in this trilogy, he's just like, you know, he's diving in headfirst against the spiders and against Bolg and everybody, and like doing. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away. It's so good. But he is truly terrified of a Balrog. Like the look on his face, and they cut right to it when you just hear the growling and like just seeing the flames, and it's just like, I'm sorry, we're on a podcast.
No, it's
he's just like terrified.
People could hear the look on your face.
But I guess that's my point. Is in the book, yes, I think you're right. It makes sense why. Legolas also is often honest where he's like, I know a lot of things. I don't know this. And he doesn't know what the heck a Balrog is or hasn't come across one. But so Gandalf says that he is was basically tapped out energetically because of what he put forth to stun everybody. How did he have the energy to fall for a week and then climb for 2 days and battle this thing then? If he was spent...
I mean, he died, so...
Yeah.
Oh.
And also, he knew that trying to get up off the stuck out the bridge of Khazad-dûm would have gotten everybody else killed too. Like if they would have tried to come over and help get him out, they would have all been killed by the orcs that were attacking.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is if he was exhausted and he fell, and that makes a lot of sense, and he was whipped down, how could he continue the fight if he was already tapped out?
Haven't you seen Fast and Furious when they're already going 150 miles an hour and then they stick shift and they somehow go faster?
That's nitrous, baby. That's nitrous.
Family.
You're right.
Family is how they do it.
Alex is part of the family now that he
That's right.
was on the Universal Studios tour. You're part of the family.
I know. Honorary member.
All right. So the stupidest sequence ever. They knee slap with giants. They end up in a cave.
And then we have... well, at the end of the Stone Giant sequence, Thorin saves Bilbo's life and almost dies in the process.
He should have died. He should have died.
Yeah. And
he's then
really
blames Bilbo for stone giants.
Yeah.
He's like, he was lost ever since he left his home. He never was like, Thorin, do the scope of what is happening here.
Right. And so we get this tension between them, and because of that, they end up sleeping in this cave, and then in the middle of the night, Bilbo's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go back to Rivendell."
I would
clearly
too.
Thorin's mad, and I don't belong here.
I almost died.
Social anxiety is one thing. Stone giants are one thing, but social anxiety, ooh,
I've
no thank
definitely slipped out of parties and many places without saying a word to anybody.
I actually didn't think about this. It's reminiscent of me literally being 11 or 10 and my first sleepover ever with 13 other girls, and I was relegated to the corner of the room to sleep. I know, just because everyone was trying to fit like in the room, and I wanted to sleep on my friend's bed, but like her two closer friends slept on the bed, so I was upset and then hot in a corner. And I got the mother up and I said, I need to go home.
Yeah Heck yes.
So I'm
but
Bilbo. I see him.
This scene leads to, like, we know Thorin, Fili, and Keely, but boy, does Boffer break my heart.
Oh my God.
this is where like having a classically trained British actor to say one important line matters.
Yep.
Because
and the way his face like changes
when he says, "No, you don't get it. You don't have a home,"
Yeah,
and you see Buffer's face drop, and then him saying, "I wish you all the luck in the world." Oh my gosh, like just thinking about it is making me gonna tear up right now.
The emotional journey of like hurt, because he's been insulted, and then acceptance of like you're right, and then empathy for and you do have a home, so go. Like all in like 3 seconds. It's and you read that reads.
Do you hate Bilbo in that moment though?
We all say things we regret. Like, I don't hate Bilbo, but like that was a mean thing to say. But he's also like, they invaded his house. He got basically gaslit and FOMO'd into this trip. He's been like almost killed already half a dozen times and blamed for stone giants 10 minutes ago. Like, how dare Thorin? So like I don't hate him, but like it was a rude thing to say to someone that is trying to like kind of like, no man, like you're good, you're doing good. Like we all know Thorin's like Thorin. Don't let that get you down. Like Beaufort's trying to like kind of hype him up a little bit and keep him around. And he said something very rude, and Bilbo but he immediately knows it. Like he doesn't like double down on it. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Like, he's in a bad spot. He's in a spot he's never been.
But also, Beaufort is apologizing for a pretty terrible boss. It's like...
Yes, he is.
Not only... This is very, very inadequate to compare, but it's the only thing my brain is drawing a comparison to. Like, Harvey Weinstein is literal piece of poop. But his lawyers are, too, because they drafted clauses in contracts to protect him from being outed as a predator. And so, in a sense... Boffer's going, yeah, he sucks, but just hang out with us still. Everything's fine. It's
and we don't know exactly what's in that contract Bilbo signed. Although we do know that they're, absolved of all responsibility for death or anything.
Oh, and then what about emotional torture then, perhaps?
It's probably in there.
Right.
It was probably in that little bit.
To be fair, Boffer's also the one that telling him about like how fast Dragonfire is. He's like, don't worry, you feel a flash of pain and poof, dust. It's like, it's okay. You're good.
It's over in a second.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a horrible comparison to draw, but it's the only one I could do. But contracts, you've got a good point.
Yeah, I don't think Thorin deserved that comparison. I'll just say that much. I don't think Thorin deserved that. He doesn't deserve that comparison.
He's really petulant, though. And what's interesting, too, is when you consider the era that these movies came out, I think we would have gotten a different casting of Thorin if it was done today, because it was very reminiscent of early 2000s sad boy music. Like, he really felt like he embodied like a Killer's song album like emotion to me, like just sad, brooding. I have nowhere to be. I'm not like Dashboard Confessional and Thorin are. They
definitely try to make him Aragorn. They definitely try to make Thorin Aragorn with like the brooding like beard, like his like you see Gimli's beard, you see Bomber and all the backup doors. They got these full beards, but Feely doesn't have one. Keely doesn't have one. Thorin doesn't have one.
Yeah, the hot light doors.
Yeah. So it's like they tried to make him more relatable and like a little somber, but like very edgelord of like, yeah, man, I've had a tough life.
That's what I'm saying. It had Dashboard Confessional on it for me.
Yeah, he's Aragorn. If Aragorn had to have taken up the quest and his mission if he were in high school. And so he's just very
I
like
want to say
emo
Dashboard.
about
I say like Fallout Boy.
Okay,
like more
Fallout
edge.
Boy's close. Yeah, that's
like
true.
Early Fallout Boy, like take this to your grave. Fallout Boy, that's Thorin.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah. Like I hope you crash your car, Thranduil.
100%. I'm not going to tell you where we're going.
Yeah,
Mom. I mean, Thranduil.
Exactly.
That's
not just a phase, Gandalf. Okay.
I'm gonna be a king.
You don't get it. My dad left me.
Yeah,
this is so hard. It sucks.
That's it exactly. I just what I mean is like I think we would have gotten a little bit different of an interpretation if it was today or even 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
and
so
Alex, like you're saying, or no, Jess, you said no one would survive the stone giants.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't believe more people surviving the stone giants than a rock trap door opening, them falling 30 feet at a time. Like there's like a slide up, all the way down to the goblin prison, and let alone Bilbo falling even further down the mountain. Like they do their best to be like, oh, we kind of slid here. That's rock. That is jagged rock.
This is where it gets full cartoon.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And I kind of love it. They're just leading into this like fun house goblin town thing. Because in the book, they just like the back of the cave opens up and they get taken by goblins.
Yeah.
But yeah, here it's this Rube Goldberg sort of machine, and they land and fall in Goblin Town. Yeah, they all would have been dead. And then there's many falls later in the chase sequence that we'll see where they just would have died. They would have died.
And so that's
entirely.
why I was misremembering the Stone Giants being the mimic for Moria, because it is like Moria. Both, the way they're jumping from platform to platform is Moria, and we're jumping a little bit ahead. We're skipping over Gollum, but I think we'll just spend a little more time on Gollum. But the entire, I hate Goblin Town so much. I hate the Goblin King so much. I don't like. I would rather watch the White Council for 2 more hours than watch that chin.
You don't like the chin sack? What's not to like about it, Jess? I don't get it. When it wobbles around when he's singing.
If it was a human that was blessed with that appendage on their body, I would have more empathy. I can't. That was so unnecessary. It was so upsetting. And you know what? I don't think I talked about this enough, and it's okay because I don't want to dwell on it. But the trolls disgusted me too. I don't know. I just didn't need to have this amount of visceral, emotional.
Did you want them to be like hot boys too?
Yeah.
Hot boy Goblin King?
I'm saying I don't want Thorin to be, so I'm not saying anyone needs to be. It's not like Azog's hot, but Azog can kind of get what's going on there.
Azog kind of is,
but you kind of get it, right? But the Goblin King, how funny would it be if the goblins were like all 6 foot and the Goblin King was like 3 foot? That's funny too. Okay, I'm getting.
I think you need to have him be the biggest one. He's the king. Like, how else are you going to get to become leader of Goblin Town if you're not the biggest? And you can just crush everybody. You know?
Yeah, there's no like royal family in Orc Town or Goblin Town. It's just strength.
I mean, it's to be fair because he is literally crushing his kin.
Yeah, like what happened with those guys?
They're dead
like
now. But you can survive a 30-foot rock fall, but you can't survive being under his foot.
No.
There's some.
To be fair, I would rather fall 30 feet down a mountain than be crushed by the Goblin King.
Oh,
That's a really fair point. You probably twitch for a little bit longer than you'd want to.
Yeah.
I love his little scribe guy that he like sends,
and then he goes down in the little thing. Like those are little fun details that keep me going throughout these movies.
Yeah, and it just makes total sense. Like we're talking about who's going to be the Goblin King, the biggest one. Who's going to be the assistant to the king? It's going to be the tiniest guy because that's the only way Dwight he's not
Schrute
getting
Goblin
killed.
Town.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. And this song that he sings, the clap snap. I do have to say, I like the songs in The Hobbit. They made it darker. So they added lyrics to it where he's just explicitly referencing torture and like putting them on his racks.
You could listen to that?
What?
I couldn't even hear a word he was saying. I couldn't even look at his chin.
Well, yeah, I was not as distracted as you, Jess, by the chin sack. I'm not judging him as we watch this. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
And I can accept that.
I don't know. Just like it's tough because I like aesthetically what Goblin Town looks like, but it's also like, why would anyone be afraid to go into Goblin Town when 13 dwarves and a wizard just carve their entire way through it without breaking a sweat? It was, and I understand, it's a tough thing to say, like how they escaped and stuff, because like Tolkien writes it very like kind of generally, like, oh, they got out of there, oh, it's a tussle and a bustle, like kind of thing,
right?
But just like they are cutting people's heads off. My favorite part is when I think it's Keeley that's getting a bow fired at him, and he grabs a ladder for cover, which is just the worst
It's insane.
thing.
It's insane.
Like, the fact that an arrow hits one of the ladder rungs is a more impressive shot than it missing a ladder rung.
It's so
Like,
true. He should have just grabbed a goblin and put a goblin in front of him.
yeah.
Why didn't I should have directed this movie? You're so right. It's unrealistic.
Well, it's like it's this, and then it also is shadowed like or mirrored with like the best part of the movie, which is Riddles in the Dark,
right?
And Andy Serkis just like coming in to just flex his muscles for a little bit, and be like, yeah, I still got it, baby, I still got it. Just trust in me right now, because like Riddles in the Dark is that good. It is. When the same way, Jess, you're going to see the same way Smaug is worth the price of admission for Desolation of Smaug, Riddles in the Dark is worth price of admission for Unexpected Journey.
I understand that. And it was. Yeah. It was, and it exceeded my expectations, which were low. And it worked. It worked. Because you know what it is? It's Martin Freeman at his best when he is scrambling, but clever. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably why you think of him for casting is how good is he as Watson, right? Like Watson's there because Watson knows how to problem solve. He's not incapable. He's not incapable. Yeah. He's not perfect though. So Riddles in the Dark, it brings to life a moment that we all know fondly in that book, because that part of the book slaps also too.
Yes.
Yeah. It's odd. Now, the way that Gollum is portrayed in the books and in the movie, does it make sense that he likes riddles in this? Does that track as the character we know him from as? It feels a little disparate to me.
Because he used to be a hobbit, essentially.
A river folk.
Yeah. So similarly to how Bilbo likes riddles and knows them, he probably would have heard some riddles in his time. And it does say that in the original Hobbit too, is that he probably reminded him of a different time, I think is what they say. Something along those lines. Yeah.
It is very Smeagol of him to do this. It's not so much Gollum. It's very Smeagol of him to be like, yeah, that sounds fun.
And I really enjoyed, and obviously just Andy Serkis hitting it out of the park, but seeing that aspect of his performance brought into this sequence from The Hobbit, I really liked, because I think it highlights the idea of this despicable creature engaging in riddles. Is you have those two sides of him kind of fighting with each other. So I really enjoyed.
There are two wolves.
Inside there are Gollum and Smeagol.
Yes.
So it was enjoyable seeing that dynamic play out in this scene, and his performances, like the moment when Bilbo asks the first riddle and he just puts his head on the rock and he's like looking up like an innocent child.
It's so good.
And you just previously saw him just murder an orc or a goblin, like
well, he did us a favor
by killing that guy.
Yeah.
And the thing is that like. Also, I think they do a good job where Gollum's a sneak. He likes to come behind people and choke them out or, hit them with a rock. He could probably beat Bilbo in a fight, but he'd get severely injured because Bilbo's got Sting. Like, if he could have snuck up on Bilbo, then he would have just choked him out and eaten him. But now that Bilbo is aware of him, he's got to find a way to like outsmart him and then eat him. And then you see, like, when things start going wrong, he's like, oh, I'm just going to go get my ring, turn invisible, and eat him. So, like, the Gollum's still there. Like, it's just, he's taking the long range. He's playing the long con.
Right.
Now, Jess, did you know the answer to any of these riddles before they said it?
No way. I mean, only because we have read the book recently, perhaps. But you know what? I don't do riddles well. I just don't.
That's fair. Like, I'm not the best riddle guy either.
Could you make up a riddle on the spot? Like, what if you needed to make up a riddle right now?
Nope.
Okay, you just get
I just don't want to leave too much dead air and like
because
nothing's gonna happen.
That's fair.
Just for the next 5 minutes. Hold on. I almost got it. Give me a second.
Okay.
Don't cut any of this.
No, we're not going to. What grows in the ground but isn't seen, and what is eaten? What isn't eaten unless it's clean?
Potato.
Or a carrot.
Sure.
Some
kind of tuber.
Oh, I do have one. What has 4 eyes but can't see?
Oh, glasses?
What's a word with 4 eyes in it?
Mississippi.
There you go.
Ooh, I made the carrot potato one up. So
see, I'm a fan of.
That 4 eyes is good though.
I'm a fan of riddles, and
of course
it has helped me immensely in D&D games as a dungeon master.
Oh,
because I love putting riddles to my players, and then they sit there for 30 minutes going, "Oh."
Do you create them or do you look them up?
No, I look them up. I'm not that good. I enjoy them. I enjoy solving them and like doing them, but I can't write a riddle. No, I'm not
Got
that
it.
good.
I mean, I just wrote that one. I don't know if you caught that. I just wrote the carrot one. It was really great. So
Watch out, Tolkien.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it well, but I think what I gather from the riddle game is that it's really not, can you make these things up? It's how many times have you played it and with whom to have learned all of them.
Yeah.
In order to play it better next time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a test of your experience as opposed to your cleverness, maybe.
Right.
So yeah.
Does Bilbo cheat by saying what's in my pocket?
100%.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. It's a cheat, and I think like it's a good moment because he's in this spot where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get eaten. Ooh, I gotta play dirty. I gotta throw dust in his eyes.
Yeah.
And trip him. You know, this is no longer a fair fight because my life is on the line."
Yeah.
So yeah, Bilbo's totally cheating. It's not honorable. Tolkien even acknowledges that it went kind of against the spirit of the riddle game as this kind of sacred concept, which I think is interesting. Yeah, totally cheating. But he gives him 3 guesses, so maybe it's kind of.
He actually kind of
fair.
gave him 4.
Yeah, the last one was 2.
Last one was 2.
But both are wrong.
Yeah.
I also like
Gollum.
L. Take the L, dude.
double L.
You already ate you have the goblin. Go eat the goblin, dude.
Yeah, he's
Got
got
goblins. They're
I
not
know.
tasty.
I know.
It's like when you have food at home that you can make, but you're like, I'm gonna order pizza.
I get it.
You know.
I may do that tonight. I get it. It's Sunday night. Let's go.
I like when he gives his first guess hands. That in this adaptation they show, and it's again a great moment for Martin Freeman to just be amazing. Like quickly, like right before he says it, like pulling his hands out of his pockets.
Well, it's written that way too in the book.
Well, I think it's a little bit, it's exaggerated here, where in the book it's like, oh, he just happened to thankfully not have them in his.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's like,
but here he's like,
just taking my hands out of my pocket or something like that. Like,
yeah, here he's
right.
like, before he says it, which is fun. It heightens, the thing I like about this adaptation is it heightens the tension that, at least for me, I felt between Gollum and Bilbo, especially with the way they introduce Gollum, which you get it in the text of when he's going to get the ring. I believe it describes him, the last time he saw it was when he killed a goblin, and here Bilbo gets to see that happen. So it really, they hit the ground running with the tension between the two, which I think works really well.
It does work well. Actually, what kind of bums me out just a tad is this is the last time we'll see Gollum.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I do think they did set us up really well for the through line of having pity.
When Gandalf gives him Sting, he's like, courage is not knowing when to take a life, but when not to.
Right.
And like, it's such a good acting by Andy Serkis and the digital artist. So like the look that he's about to stab him, and then he turns, and then just like the look of he's just sad. Like he's
so
just
sad,
and he just sees like how just like a horrible life this creature has been given, and he decides to just just hurdle him, just kick him in the face and
Yeah.
hurdle him, just like
I was gonna
okay,
mention
I was gonna put you out of misery like easily, but instead I'm gonna knee you to the face.
Yeah, because in the book he just jumps over him, but they made like that. It's such an interesting choice to have Bilbo with that big hairy hobbit foot too. It's not just a normal kick.
Or the $6 million man.
Yeah.
That's so weird. I mean, maybe it didn't pop off exactly right in the animation. Maybe it was like he kind of tripped him, or like we didn't clear him.
No, it was an intentional kick to the face. He's like, you know
Bilbo.
what? I'm gonna knock out one of those 9 teeth you have.
Yeah.
Did he knock out a tooth?
No, but
Could have.
he could have. He hit him hard.
Check the tapes. How many teeth does he have in Lord of the Rings?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We can cross-reference this.
That's a good question. I do like, though, that they truncated, like, getting Bilbo out, and we didn't have to watch him also escape the goblins.
But
I thought they did a good job by not making it a 4-part movie by doing it this way.
Yeah.
They do a nice homage to it, though, where when he's fleeing from Gollum, that's when we get the button popping moment. So nice little nod to that whole escape sequence, getting past the goblins. Yeah, like the economy of story stuff, like having Bilbo immediately get separated before they encounter the Goblin King works. Having them come out at the same time, like that's all. Like, Peter Jackson knows how to really make this work for film in terms of the pacing. Like
Talk
similar,
about
like
a Looney Tunes moment, like like when there's like the dust brawl, and then one person steps out of the dust brawl, and like it's just the person fighting with themselves.
Yes,
that's how Bilbo gets away from the goblins, where like everybody's brawling, and he just goes, and then they just brawl away from him, and he's like, okay.
You know what? He's so small, or supposed to be, that it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And there's also 13 dwarves. Like, they don't have time to do a head count. Go, we got 14 mates. Let's go. It does work. It's silly, but that's the kind of stuff I can believe is your base instinct kicks in and it works for you.
Yes.
Mm. And he's playing into his natural hobbit tendencies. They're very stealthy.
I love it.
So they get out of Goblin Town. Thorin again, being his typical Thorin self, blaming Bilbo. Oh, he should have left. He probably left us. And then Bilbo's like, you know what? I am not gonna let that stand. Reveals himself, and everybody else is happy to see him. Thorin's not, but and especially Gandalf, obviously. And they're all wanting an explanation, but he just doesn't give one. Not even like like in the book, he's like, I'm a burglar. I did burglary stuff. He doesn't even like try and do that. He's just like, Yeah,
it's definitely like a movie thing. But like, how do you guys like that he's already like kind of playing with the ring in his pocket? Like it seemed like there are, and they do like the theme of the ring, like when he puts it in his pocket and he's kind of like playing with it. Do you guys like that he was already like kind of doing that?
I think so. Yeah. Like there's definitely, the ring, I think, immediately acts on anybody who has it.
Yeah.
And because he's a hobbit, he's more resistant to it than others. And because of the way he got it, he's more resistant to it than others, right? He didn't, like Gollum claimed it by killing someone, right? He, in his mind, at least his rationale, he kind of won it, right? And just happens to find it. He didn't, and immediately had that moment of pity afterwards. So I think like it acting on him in just a way of like, oh, I'm going to kind of just hold on to this is fine. And not wanting to immediately like tell Thorin and company about it, even though later he does. But yeah, to me that works. It lines up with he's not going like, don't ask how I did it, and like trying to being very obvious about it. So, but Gandalf does clock the ring here, which is an interesting choice again because he's suspicious of Bilbo, but I don't think it seems to me like they were wanting us to believe he like straight up saw the ring. So interesting sort of deviation. It's not quite as egregious as the Rankin and Bass. That has the ring of truth to it. It really rings true when he's talking about his story.
Yeah.
That was very, very cheesy.
When we get to Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, Ben sent me a great gif of Gandalf literally like just purposely scaring Sam for no reason. Like, like
yeah,
flips
I'll have
his
to send you
finger
that
at
TikTok.
him.
It's just like, and it's also, it's
based Gandalf.
It really, and especially because someone had to animate that. It isn't
Right.
just like a little out like no, someone had to like frame by frame animate just Gandalf like just scaring Sam for no reason. It's so perfect.
It's horrifying and gives a whole different impression of Gandalf to me.
But that does lead us into the reason why you hold production for Martin Freeman is his speech of like, I will, you don't have a home, but I will help you take it back if I can. Like this is for my like my garden, my home, my comfy chair. Like that's where I belong. And that's why you wait. That's why you hold production. That's why he is Bilbo, is this moment. And also he doesn't look a lot of people in the eye. Like he's always kind of fidgeting and stuff like that. And like, he is looking Thorin directly in the eye and speaking to him as an equal in this moment. I literally clocked that, where it's just like, he is standing up, no social awkwardness, nothing. Like he is saying like, this is why I'm here. This is why I came back. And so I love this moment so much. Martin Freeman is the savior of this trilogy. Like no matter how, Jess, you will see in Battle of the Five Armies how ridiculous this movie gets. Martin Freeman is our North Star. He is our constant. He is our guiding light. And that moment, that speech that he gives, it isn't overdone. It isn't some, battle cry or something like that. It is just Bilbo finally speaking his mind when these loud, boisterous dwarves who have been talking and over-talking and shouting and making merry and destroying furniture and skinny dipping for 2.5 hours, he finally gets his say, and it is perfect.
It's one of the things that's not hard. Well, yeah. I don't understand what Gandalf sees in a Hobbit from the Shire. I don't understand how this guy who's never fought a lick in his life is able to do so many things, who's never stolen anything. And I understand a lot of weight is rested on the Tookish side of him, in the book at least. But in this moment, it actually works. The growth works for me. I'm like, he's coming into his own. He was more adolescent than we realize,
Yeah, and I do enjoy the moment jumping back with Gandalf and Galadriel where she asks Gandalf why the Hobbit, and he says, I'm not sure. He gives me hope and courage, and sometimes it's the deeds of everyday folk that can keep evil at bay, which is a very Tolkien theme and idea. I liked that acknowledgement, and I agree. I like we're seeing Bilbo grow here, and that speech exemplifies that. However, in the next scene, I think they sped that growth up a little bit because we get Azog coming in out of the frying pan into the fire. And in this sequence, when they get chased up the trees, Thorin comes out. They all sort of get into one tree. It's like hanging off the cliff, like very dramatically. They're amping up the tension here. And Thorin goes out to meet Azog, one-on-one combat, because he's just learned that he's alive still, and now
should have been the reveal of the movie.
It should have happened here.
Yes.
It should have happened here. But when he gets his ass kicked immediately, because they're still kind of tired from, fighting their way out of Goblin Town.
Oh, that's
Thorin's
the reason. Sure.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sure. Sure.
He also gets dump trucked by a white ward. Like,
yeah. But he's about to get his head chopped off, and what happens? Bilbo straight up tackles an orc and just stabs him in the chest and kills him
repeatedly.
This moment, like, I'm fine with Bilbo doing heroic things, but I think it's a jump from like using wits and cleverness.
Yeah.
Like the first time we kind of see it is like in Mirkwood, when he kind of he in the movie version he saves him with his wits from the trolls, with Gandalf's help. But then in Mirkwood is when he really kind of comes into his own and starts saving the dwarves again and again.
But it is also with wits during that as well, too.
Yeah,
that
and the help of the ring.
In order to escape, it necessitates his violence.
Yes, exactly. So this seems like I get what they're doing with this being part of the character arc and the tension between Thorin and Bilbo, which I enjoy, but particularly with having it culminate right after a beautiful like speech about how he feels, and he's like, I'm going to help you on the quest, to I'm going to commit this act of violence, which I have a hard time believing a hobbit could do that, just stature-wise. Not the biggest orc, he's not Azog-sized, but still a guy who's barely fought anything before. He's barely used Sting.
Well, and isn't it just that, too? Isn't the first kill he makes a spider, and thus that's why he calls it Sting?
Yes. Correct.
Like,
yeah, it's not, he hasn't named the sword yet.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The first kill is the spider.
Yes.
And that's when he decides to call it Sting because the spiders say that it's Sting. So I think you're right. Like, it makes more sense in character for him to have outwitted them again to save him.
Or just have it be a moment where he it's a sort of symbolic act of I'm going to charge in and try and save you, but I'm ineffectual. And Thorin still doesn't die, obviously, but like the fact that he literally saves Thorin's life by killing somebody, I think is odd to me.
Have it where, because he kills a warg before he goes up into the tree, have it like a moment like that where like he's kind of backing up with his sword and the wolf like runs straight into it, and then like he can't pull his sword out, he can't pull Sting out.
Right.
Have it something like that, or just him jumping in front, and then all the other dwarves like come in and like charge in as well.
Do these things happen because they don't give us enough credit as the audience to think those, like, or do they feel like we need him to be more heroic in order for this movie to be more interesting? Because, like, think about it. This is the same dude who kicked a guy in the face to run away from him, who crouched. His flight, freeze, or flight, freeze, or fight are the three. They're proving more and more that freeze is one of them. He freezes. His freezing has gotten him saved. He doesn't run. He doesn't fight. So how come all of a sudden he has this change of adrenaline reaction?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I hear that.
It doesn't make sense to me. I think all we needed was the speech to show that he's there. But then I think the reason they do it is because then later, Thorin reciprocates, because Thorin's love language is killing orcs. You killed an orc for me and saved my life. Yeah. I can feel you.
So
now.
Fallout Boy.
So very Fallout Boy.
Can we talk about?
We cannot.
The moth.
No.
What did y'all think about the moth?
I don't think we needed the moth. I think it's too Lord of the Rings. Like, I understand the eagles do come in the book, and I'm okay with the eagles coming in here, but in the same exact way that he gets rescued from Orthanc, like that's, and in much less time, by the way. That moth seemed to take a few days on Orthanc, but that moth is zipping. That moth is Amazon Prime over there, man. Same day delivery. But I'm okay with the eagles, and I have it written down that Bilbo's look of horror as he first sees an eagle like just yeet a wolf off the cliff. I'm with you. I'm sorry, if I saw a giant eagle just bare fist a warg and just like later off a cliff, I'd also be like, that's helpful, but good Lord, what else is in Middle Earth? Like, can I go back to the Shire immediately?
And also, he doesn't know if they're going to do that to him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That does help. Like, it's hard to articulate that in film because it's done really well in the book. It's like he doesn't know if he's a prisoner or he's like gonna be food. But I think you bring up a great point. He has seen the scariest thing from below, underneath. He has seen fright from the skies and stone giants. I would actually probably tuck it in and pray to God no one finds me next to the rock I decided to live by.
Yeah. And I feel like I would just be like, I guess I'll go forward because I don't want to go back of what I just faced. Like, so I guess I'll go forward.
And he's just lying, saying, I'm here to help you guys find a home, yo.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I clocked it. He's like, you expect I'm going to go back through the Misty Mountains right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
No, I'm going to go forward, and I don't know how I'm getting home. Like I drove my friend across the country to Arkansas, and then I flew home. But there's no flight home here. Like, they always skip that part, like in Lord of the Rings and in this. Like, oh, the journey, there and back again. You didn't skip the back again. Luckily, the back again was uneventful.
Right.
Luckily, exactly. That's so true. So the moth is egregious. The eagles rescuing them is pretty cool. It's a cool little moment.
I enjoyed how they depicted that, and then like the eagles just sort of like dropping them to each other, and just
very cool,
barely swooping in. It was a fun way to represent that. Yeah, my thoughts on the moth are, I mean, it's how it happened in the movie. It's not how it happened in the book, and so it's just like, why make the connection?
I don't know if you're an audience member, you understand, and you don't know the book, you understand why all of a sudden eagles come, unless like.
Because I think in the book, I'm pretty sure, like, don't they like tell Gandalf like they saw the smoke and so they came to investigate or something?
Exactly.
They don't talk in the movies,
right?
So you have to have a reason for them to be there, because otherwise, like, it's even more of an ex machina than it already is.
Mm-hmm,
so I do get it, but it's also, and it's us, and I'm not saying this in any like disparaging way for the common person. It's like, oh, I remember the moth. Yeah, the moth and the eagle. It's like, okay. But like for us super nerds, it's like, oh my God, we get it. We get it. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's helpful to those dudes that just don't know it.
Yeah, it's the shorthand that has been built up from the movies, but
so get over it, Alex. Jeez,
it just bothers me because they're not a taxi service. You can't just call them like an Uber every time you need the Eagles. Oh, let me just send out a moth. Like, that's not how the Eagles work, and it bothers me because it perpetuates the questions that Jess is all too familiar with. Why didn't the Eagles just fly him into Mordor? Because you can't just summon them whenever you want. So that anytime I see this kind of thing, it bothers me. It bothers me.
And you know
what?
That's
I get why it's there.
That's the hill you can die on. I'll just to make you feel a little bit better, my love. I didn't like it either. I thought it was, But by this point though, I was really ready for the movie to be done. So anything that would have carried on I was like, so he sent the moth, and the moth is gonna get the eagles soon. Why aren't they here now? Like, I really was so ready for the eagles to be right there. Anyway, so the eagles drop them.
Yeah, they get saved and they get brought to the mountains, where they can get a beautiful view of Erebor. And also Gandalf uses some healing powers on Thorin, because they're all afraid, like, oh, Thorin, is he dead? When they're flying back, when he's in the eagle's claw. So he heals Thorin, and we get this amazing moment of Thorin. The classic trope of, I'm gonna be really pissed at you.
Yeah,
and I'm glad I was wrong. Like the twist, which it's great.
It worked.
And completely redeem yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Bilbo's like, oh no. Oh, okay.
Okay. Like, as much as we all don't like Thorin in this movie, for me it was a cathartic hug. It works for me. The hug does work for me, and that's just like, I guess the skill of acting that they like. There are really good actors in these movies, like, and so just Richard Armitage, like him, like you said, it is a Dumb and Dumber line. Like, just when I thought you couldn't be any dumber, you go and do this and totally redeem yourself. Like, that's such a line, and it's the same exact line but said dramatically, and that gives skill and credence to Richard Armitage's acting of like, and I could never be more wrong, and just his relief that he was wrong about Bilbo,
Right.
and this is one of the boys, and like he's saying it as he's giving the hug, and the surprise on Bilbo's face, and the score swells. It works so well.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
want to
the
see
score.
someone admit being wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And the movie does do a good job of like Thorin, like being this stubborn, curmudgeonly, don't trust anybody, don't accept anybody new, no new friends kind of person. And then that hug, like, boom, you're in.
Totally.
And so I do like that moment.
Totally.
Mhm.
Then they see Erebor.
Mm-hmm. They have
And
the
Bilbo
sign.
jinxes it. It
Wait,
is all Bilbo's fault.
What does he say?
I do believe the worst is behind us.
Thanks, Bilbo.
Oh,
Thanks,
couldn't
Bilbo.
Come
Bilbo
on,
wrong.
Bilbo.
It's like
this
when
is
Alex
first
has-
grade stuff.
It's like when Alex has a hot magic streak and he's like, I'm going to win them all. And he loses
Yeah.
the next one.
You don't talk to a pitcher during a perfect game. You don't order your food when it's dead at a restaurant. You don't do these things. You don't do it.
I didn't
look,
know
it's
that.
Bilbo's
That makes a lot of
first
sense.
adventure. Let's
Yeah,
cut him some
it's
slack.
true.
He doesn't
He's
know
a
these
rookie.
things.
He went
Yeah.
through some stuff, though, too. He can't imagine anything
Yeah.
worse.
This has been the worst 24 hours of his life.
But also, Bilbo, where did sense leave you? You're heading toward a dragon. So actually, he's an idiot. So, like, I know about dragons. Do you know what they're going to do to you? Like, he's already been told about how quickly he will die. So, for him to think the worst is behind.
Yeah. He's straight up looking at the
You know what
worst.
he's trying to do is
Yeah.
he's manifesting.
Yes.
He's trying to
There
manifest.
you go. He read the secret.
Yeah, he was like, I think I can make this. I can do anything. He's riding the high of being accepted by the bros.
I'll say that much. If I just got a ride from a great eagle away from a burning tower of orcs, and I finally got validation from the boss, I would be riding pretty.
You're
high as well.
invincible.
So
The wizard
And-
likes you. Like, what the
Right?
heck? Everything's going really well.
And he's also got that ring magic coursing through his veins.
Exactly.
He's high on that too.
he just outriddled Gollum and kicked him in the face as he escaped the goblin tunnels.
He smoked what Radagast smoked. He's doing good. He's high on life, man.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's dumb, but it actually is one of the few things
Yeah.
in this movie that actually makes sense.
For sure.
So I think that brings that to the close. Is that right? Is there anything more in this movie after that?
No.
That's it.
That's it. Go.
Hard cut to black after I think the worst is behind us.
And you know what? It's also true. Not true for the
No,
movies.
no. There is actually. It's not that you see the thrush returning to
Yeah.
the mountain,
Yeah.
and then it's so good. Like this is
the tease.
the tease is so good. Like you can say these movies are rushed, and I've said it like studio interference, but Peter Jackson is a theater man. The guy knows theatrics. The thrush cracking the snail, and you see it echoing through the halls of Erebor, and then boom, the snort, and then the dragon's eye opens, and you hear it growl, and then cut to
The
black.
thrush woke up the dragon.
Okay.
Exactly.
Wow. So if it weren't what you're saying, Jess, is if it weren't for that bird, they would have just gone in there, grabbed the Arkenstone.
He
End of
might have woken up
story.
a different way eventually.
Okay.
But
Eventually.
as far as this depiction goes,
Ah.
the thrush is the leaf. And that Smaug is the Balrog. I rest my case. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see.
Smaug is Sourman, confirmed.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smaug is Celeborn in the Rings of Power.
Smaug is Mephisto. We got it. Perfect.
Yes, there's so much to love. There's so much to hate. There's so much to scratch your head and go, why? And at the same time, just delight. And I'm really anxious. I forgot Legolas is in them.
Can I mention one thing I forgot to mention that
Lord.
was in my notes?
No, of course, baby.
Galadriel straight up Dark Knighting Gandalf. Do you guys remember
No.
this? Right. It might have only been in the extended.
Oh
But
yes, like with the hands and
And
then
she just disappears?
Just disappears.
And he's like
Yes.
looks around just like Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
I just
It is
love
odd.
that moment.
It is
I forgot
odd.
to mention that.
But I thought we did talk about that moment because that's where the romance was. I thought, or
Yeah.
like what you
Yes.
guys thought. Okay,
For sure.
But
Well-
straight up the disappearance was
what
Yeah.
what
it
better
was so
way to
good.
leave your lover than with mystery?
and that's what goes into like these godlike beings. We're just like a back to like day-to-day life with them, and it's a tough sell that Rings of Power has, and I think they're doing as good as they can with it.
They really can. They really do. I think we'll see. We'll see what happens when we do our recap and go into season 2. That will happen in probably 2025. Honestly, it's
a couple years.
It's probably not even worth talking about. Which is why we're keeping busy with so many other Lord of the Rings-esque things. Ben, thank you again for joining us. What's your
Always fun.
What's your like one sentence summary feeling about this first movie?
I think this is a legitimately good movie. There are tough parts about it, but Martin Freeman solidifies himself as a lovely successor to Elijah Wood and Sean Astin. The dwarves aren't quite the Fellowship, but the small parts each of them have, they take like a huge bite of without like being like, oh hey, there's never like that I'm the big extra moment.
Right.
Boffer, I think his name is James Nesbitt. I think that's who that is.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Jason Nesbitt?
Him,
No.
maybe I'm not
No,
sure.
that's not an English name.
Him, I wish you all the luck in the world, is beautiful. There's a lot of lovely moments, and I give this movie like an 8 out of 10. for me.
Wow.
And like Lord of the Rings are 10 out of 10. That whole trilogy 10 out of 10. Perfect, flawless. Don't ever touch them. But this movie is an 8 out of 10 for me, and I really felt back at home in Middle Earth when I first watched this.
Lord of the Rings isn't 10 out of 10 for me only because
You're
of
wrong.
how Legolas jumps onto the horse and defies actual gravity. And it's
I don't know why they did
It's
that.
the
Like,
weirdest thing.
He loops right onto it. Like him just doing whoop would have been perfect, but they make him go, huh?
Yeah,
And it's
he
I don't-
doubles back for
What about when
absolutely
he-
no reason.
What about when he walks on snow? That's fine.
That's fine.
That's different.
That's very
How?
different.
Okay, but he's defying physics
So here's
in that
the
moment
thing.
too.
It's all CGI, him doing this body bending contortionist anti-gravity move to get onto a horse when it would have just made sense to grab it and swoop from under and end on it. Like it just doesn't it looks you know what it does? This is also why it's 9 out of 9, 9 out of 10 because it's akin to the doll of Gandalf being whipped around in a circle on Sauron's marble floor. It's the same camp. It's dumb. Where he's grasping.
That's not dumb. You're wrong.
Okay.
There.
Anyway, Alex, tell everybody how they could.
I'm shook from what Ben just said, but I will tell everyone how they can find us on the internet. Twitter.com/Pod of the Rings. Patreon.com/Pod of the Rings. On Instagram at POTR Pod. I can't believe you like that scene, Ben. You can go to Podcast of the Rings.
Have chosen the way of pain. Come on. I'm sorry.
Where
like
the animatronics is just clasping at the floor?
what are you talking
It's
about?
not. It's a real guy.
It's not.
It's a real guy.
That's a
Yes, it
fake
is. No, it's
body.
not. It's a real guy.
No,
It
it's
was
not.
practical.
No, it's
There's
not.
the one shot of him going up that's CG.
No, there's a
Anyway.
doll of him going around in circles.
Podcastoftherings.com for all the other information.
I look forward to
Geek
Geek with Shield's take on this.
Oh my God. This is the most controversial thing that's ever happened. But that's where you can find
And you
us
can find Ben Goddard at everywhere at the Ben Goddard.
Everywhere at the Ben Goddard.
Dude.
At me and tell me how wrong Jess and Alex
That's
are.
fine.
That they're not. These are flawless.
I'm not
movies.
above. I'm not above being.
There is the actual one movie mistake when you watch Aragorn run to Boromir after he kills is it Lurtz?
Yeah.
The orc. There's an extra of one of the Uruk-hai, and he's laying down and he goes, huh? And he looks up for 1 second and then lays back
I
down.
never know. I'm gonna have to rewatch that scene. I've never noticed that.
Everyone go YouTube that. Go watch the Lurtz versus Aragorn fight into the beautiful moving Boromir death scene. When Aragorn is running across the field, there's one orc that looks up, and I can't believe it's such a simple scene. Like, I know there's like a bunch of bodies, but like the fact that no one caught this guy just look up, like, hey, like that's his moment. That's his claim to fame. It's him being like,
the Starbucks cup.
It's
the Starbucks cup of
Game of Thrones. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Love it.
That's amazing. You can find Alex doing Twitch stuff at twitch.tv/Solkatu. I'm Jessica Nerdy for some reason. This has been Podcast of the Rings, a new episode every Tuesday, folks. And next week, if you're watching along with us, get your hands on that extended version, The Desolation of Smaug. It's happening.
It's happening.
Let's
go.
1 of part 2 next week. And until... Wait. You say it until then, Ben.
And until then...
May our roads meet again.